Hi, this is Daniel. I'm a property solicitor and a member of the Lease Advice Bureau. On Tuesday last week, we heard the King's speech, offering upcoming plans that the government has in store for the future of the country. Amongst these was a reference to the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill that has been the topic of much interest and speculation over the last few years. The King's speech and accompanying briefing notes contained more detail about the intended reforms, and you can check out those briefing notes in the link below. Since the King's speech, the House of Commons has been in much debate over its contents, and we've compiled the following clips of not just the King's speech, but the statements made by the members of Parliament. Let's have a look.
My ministers will bring forward a bill to reform the housing market by making it cheaper and easier for leaseholders to purchase their freehold and tackling the exploitation of millions of homeowners through punitive service charges. Renters will benefit from stronger security of tenure and better value, while landlords will benefit from reforms to provide certainty that they can regain their properties when needed.
Leasehold reform is something that is oft-promised, nothing yet delivered. I would like to see that motor through. And as a Labour and Co-op MP, I would like to see a move towards common hold. And I think that there's work that's been done there in other countries that we could build on. It's not a quick path. It is actually quite slow to deliver this, but we need to. That's another reason we need to get moving and start on that now. And I commend the Father of the House for his pioneering work on championing the issues of leaseholders in this place.
I'm also really pleased to see some progress on leasehold reform. I know this is important to a number of my constituents who've suffered distress, anxiety and financial hardship as a result of the current system. The proposals announced today, I welcome the fact that they're going to make it cheaper and easier for leaseholders to extend their lease. This is a complex area. We do need to take care to avoid unintended consequences that could jeopardise investment or unfairly penalise the funds on which so many people's retirement income depends and which may have invested in freehold interests. But I feel with careful scrutiny in Parliament we can deliver reform which works for leaseholders and which tackles the abuses which have occurred. The ban on selling new houses on a leasehold basis is absolutely right. I also welcome the additional protections and transparency measures for leaseholders. But constituents tell me the rights they already have to challenge unreasonable charges are cumbersome and expensive to operate. It could feel like a very unequal struggle with the freeholder. So I hope ministers will bear in mind that these measures that they're announcing today will only work if leaseholders can actually use the new rights they're being granted. And with that in mind, scrapping the presumption that leaseholders pay freeholder legal costs when they challenge poor practice is a much needed change, and I welcome that aspect of today's announcement.
The government has finally announced some reforms to leaseholds, yet despite the wait, they do not go nearly far enough. This weekend, I was out speaking to residents on Newcastle Great Park in my constituency. It's one of the largest new housing estates in the North East. Some residents have lived there for over a decade. They're paying service charges on top of their council tax, yet they are left with pavements and roads that are quite frankly hazardous. And they've been waiting for promised community facilities for years on end. Residents left in limbo without any real plan for when their estate will be finished and adopted. Children growing up and leaving home before a proper pavement even appears outside their house. Residents deserve certainty, at the very least, about the timescales within which adoption should take place. Since 2017, the government have promised to legislate, I'm quoting, legislate to ensure that freeholders who pay charges for the maintenance of facilities on a private or mixed-use estate can access equivalent rights as leaseholders to challenge the reasonableness of service charges. This would provide real hope for residents, but it seems we have yet another missed opportunity.
I move on to the Leasehold Reform Bill, Sir Roger. Now, we've yet to see the detail of this leasehold reform, and I echo the words of the Right Honourable Member for Brent North, my constituency neighbour. It is important that we have a position whereby we can make it cheaper and easier for leaseholders to extend their lease and take over the management of their building. Now, the bill will definitely ban leaseholds for new houses, but I understand not new flats in England and Wales. Therefore, although the standard lease extension will increase up to 990 years from the 90 years originally allowed, what this will not do is do the enfranchisement and abolition of leasehold that many of us in this House would dearly like to see. So I welcome those measures that are going to be introduced, but we must remember, Sir Roger, that many young people who buy their first property do so on a leasehold basis. They're often not given proper legal advice about what happens to them as a result, and as a result, they don't understand the consequences of what will happen from those people that own. I will indeed.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and I declare my interest as a chartered surveyor. One scourge that we need to deal with in this bill is that I've had lots of constituents on newly built housing estates in the last 10 years, which are leasehold and do have escalating ground rents in them. And they, as you say, they didn't understand the consequences when they bought them, and we need to address that problem.
Indeed. The other measure, I agree with my honourable friend, that the other measure that must be introduced in this is to stop the scandal of house builders and property developers who build properties, sell the leaseholds, and then sell the freehold to finance companies who then rip off the leaseholders without the leaseholders even being told that their leasehold has been sold. I've been campaigning on this for some time, and indeed there are house builders in this country whose policy it is to do that after 6 months without even notifying the leaseholders of that fact that it's been sold. And when you've then put that together with individuals who, after all, may not be given the proper advice on conveyancing about the consequences of what could happen, this is absolutely disgraceful.
Also on property, the Leasehold and Freehold Bill, pleased to see that introduced. Even the Levelling Up Secretary has admitted the leasehold system is outdated and feudal, but it is disappointing to see such a half-hearted attempt at reform again. It's good to see a ban on leaseholds on new houses, but houses only make up 30% of leasehold homes in England. There's no reason why flat owners deserve less protection and higher costs. That's yet another Tory U-turn that will leave far too many flat owners facing extortionate bills and ground rents for homes they already own. Although, given the fact that the Home Secretary's recent announcement on tents wasn't taken up, at least they will have the, they'll be safe in the knowledge they can switch to sleeping under a dual carriageway in a little tent of their own for the foreseeable future. I'm trying to be positive here, but there isn't a lot to go on, and I think that's evidenced by the fact there are no Tory MPs waiting to speak, and the last Tory MP who did speak managed to get through 10 minutes without mentioning anything in the King's speech at all, but told us an awful lot about Shakespeare, which was educational, I guess, in its own way.
In regards to leasehold, so I'm now going to move on to leasehold. Or shall I call it fleecehold, as many of my constituents call it? It's itself a feudal practice. Not my words, but rather the words of the member for Surrey Heath, the Secretary of State for Housing. A feudal practice that has left many of my constituents trapped in a serf-like position. He also promised me, in this chamber, that he would grasp this issue. He used rather emotive language about applying vice-like pressure. Yes, it appears his grip has soon weakened. And I'm sure the developers and freeholders are quite relieved about that. The impact on my constituents, just some of the examples, a 300% increase in building insurance costs despite no change in their building. Service charges doubling even though the lift has been left broken and the intercom out of action in their block. The constituent unable to move with their partner and children to a bigger home because of a quirk of the Help to Buy system. I could go on. These problems all stem from the huge flaws in the leasehold system, huge flaws that the government's modest set of tiny limited changes just doesn't start to address. And there's the shadow of the building safety crisis that still hangs over many of my constituents. It's been 6 years since over 70 people died in the Grenfell fire, and over a decade since 6 people died in Lakenhall House fire. Constituents, mine and those across the country, are still waiting for vital building safety work to begin, despite it being promised months ago for their block. Many are not even eligible for any support because their building is less than 12 metres high. The government have once again failed leaseholders with the crumbs on offer. No more leasehold houses to be built. Well, big deal. Developers should never have started building leasehold houses in the first place. I'm pleased that my honourable friend, the member of Greenwich and Woolwich, has said that a Labour government has said what a Labour government will do. Ban the sale of new leasehold flats too, as well as houses, and fix the mess in the leasehold system to ensure existing leaseholders can move to common hold. Common hold must become the default for flats and render leasehold obsolete, and freehold must be the norm for new houses. Labour would enact the recommendation from the Law Commission report, and we will do what this government has failed to do. The government's failure to fix our broken leasehold system is part of a much wider problem, a failure to understand the housing crisis across this country. The Prime Minister is once again out of touch about the crisis in the country, and this King's speech should end the myth that the Conservatives are the party of home ownership. As my right honourable friend from Ashton-under-Lyne said, the Prime Minister caved in to the demands of his own backbenchers and got rid of housing targets. He caved in to the pressure from freeholders and dropped real leasehold reform. And he caved into the pressure from private landlords and watered down rental reform. A watered down government with a watered down King's speech.
So as you can see, there appears to be great cross-party support for these reforms. And this gives a greater likelihood that many of these reforms will eventually hit the statute books. There is, however, great uncertainty on timings and whether we'll see the most significant changes occur before the next general election in 2025. It is still light on detail, but at least we can discuss these topics in broad terms, and in an upcoming video, we intend to break down the contents of the briefing notes and explain what these changes could mean to landlords, tenants, as well as managing agents. If you like this video and would like to hear more, please hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.